Like, if we move on to this series, Zabatine, this is the interesting thing for me, is already as the split was ending, it felt like actually as G2 went on that win streak, everyone's like confidence in G2 just went with it. Like now they arrive in the playoffs and suddenly it feels like you can say they could be a contender to win the whole thing again. Like before, if you remember in the middle of the split, people were actually having to have that realization, like maybe they don't even make worlds. Like that was on the table. So what do you think of the current G2?
I think G2 has drastically improved, and we were talking already like previous weeks that they were finding their playstyle, like trying to find a playstyle that's not the G2 of last year with Reckless, but a G2 that includes the difference between Perks and Reckless in their play. I feel like they found kind of a pace. And there is as well the introduction of Tamkench and Mundo on the top lane that enable Wunder to play like half champion that he can actually play on, that are going to be very reliant. And then G2 can like play around Reckless and Caps much more and not really rely.
Oh, you mean like self-sufficient, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, right.
He's already very good on like champion that are like I would say the classic style champion. Like he's good because he knows how to play them. But I feel like they have a much wider spectrum of draft that fit them, and the meta is really like better. The better your ADC is, the easier it is to win games at the moment, like mid okay. and ADC. And I feel like this really fits G2. So they're on the verge of finding, I think, their pace. But I would say that Rogue with a proper macro and Mad are still for me a little bit better overall, like in terms of playing the game. But if G2 goes full power, that's G2, and they should win the trophy at the end.
What he said at the end there, that last sentence, amazing, basically is like the power of G2 names. Like we've arrived back at where we began the year, like on paper, you look at the names and you're like, they should win, right? Because as he said there, when he like if his point is accurate about the position of ADC, well, if the people didn't see, at the end of the split when they put some of those like trivia stats, Reckless did the usual Reckless way, he had the most kills for ADC, least deaths for ADC. So if anything, he's right back in his bag. So what do you think about G2 at the moment, Amazing?
I think they're really good. I think they've solved some of those issues, because I think the entire year, and it's been kind of like, I guess, what has been holding them back is that they had to figure out how to really implement Wunder as well as Junkos into the lineup at this point in time, because I do think that the dynamics changed. So back in the days, obviously Junkos used to be a carry jungler, Wunder used to be a carry top laner, but over time, and we have to address this to a certain extent, is that Wunder and Junkos, they haven't gotten complacent, but their playsets have kind of like really leaned onto the other members. They became more and more reliant on the other members to actually perform and really carry. So Junkos became more of a supportive type jungler. Wunder now has become more of a supportive type top laner, where he's not the focal point anymore. So they really had to figure this out with Reckless, where like a lot of the aggression gets lost because that's just Reckless space style that is like slightly less aggressive than other AD carries. And now they kind of found the balance back in. Junkos is more in that position right now, I think, where he actually understands, hey, I don't need to carry every game, but I can at least like push into that direction. And Reckless now is really pushing that aggression again, where he's kind of looking a lot more like the Season 7 Fnatic Reckless, where he tries to push for leads and really tries to abuse the enemy bot lane. And I think that's something that they had to develop, as well as obviously their macro decisions in the mid game, because they always relied on fights, on mid game team fights, and now they actually can rely on rotations again, which is something that's made them win games against a lot of teams back in the past.
What would you actually say, Zabatine? What would you actually say if you had to speculate? When they brought Nelson in, obviously that was like supposed to be like the big gamble play to revitalize the team without literally cutting a player or bringing in another coach, just adding like another set of eyes, a different perspective on the game. Do you actually think? Have you noticed in the draft, the G2 feel like a different team?
I feel like they're just much more realistic with the current state of their players, as Maurice was saying. Is like, if you look at the previous games, I was just like looking over the drafts of G2 in the previous weeks, and like Wunder is on a Mundo Camille GP duty, right? Self-sufficient top laner that don't get much if you put attention into, but eventually are gonna be very impactful later in the game, so he can much more rely on knowledge. So I feel like a huge point in coaching that's never pointed out, which is very, very important, even more crucial than actually knowing about the game, is using the natural strength and trends of your group.
Yes,
and I feel like
tendencies, yeah,
exactly. And I feel like I think Nelson helped identifying that Wunder doesn't need to get a good carry, and last year he was even playing Janna top lane, which is not that much of a carry in any sort of way. So at this point, I feel like he has been reinforcing the strength and the weaknesses of the players, but he has been building a system around the strength of the players, and now they play like they don't have to spend too much energy to play this play style, and they just perform better.
I can't, because obviously to do this stream, I have to know when the game's going live. So I have like the fucking LEC stream on a Twitch on the side that I just every now and then glance at. And I made the mistake, amazing. I always tell people I never read Twitch chat during the shows. I made the mistake of my brain just glancing in a Twitch chat, and there was actually a comment, no joke, that just said like, "Was this game?" Because it was showing like Mad Lions as G2 from like I'm assuming like during the split, probably like the best of one or whatever. And there was someone in the comments like, "Is this from last year?" It's like, yeah, Reckless was on G2 last year. Yeah, you win, fans. Like the fans win again. All the basically we all. I know you might think the fan took the L there, but in many ways we all took the L. That we waste our lives actually producing this content, all these shows, and then this guy's just like, "Oh, what's that? Like, where's Froggen?" Like, fucking listen, it's a joke. It's okay. What were you gonna say there? Go ahead, amazing. Let's keep it going with G2.
Yeah, I was just going to say like that. I mean, the change that Nelson brought, I think, is basically that, as everyone just said, right? Like, if you really want to win and you don't want to waste energy, I think that's the biggest point, right? If you don't want to waste a lot of energy in the season, especially when you have to have a short-term turnaround, you have to be really strict on what you can allow and what you cannot allow, right? If your players are shit at something, well, they're shit at something. If they're good at something, they're good at something. And then you have to just enforce that continuously and make sure that you make use of that, because otherwise you keep chasing a phantom or a ghost, because you keep like trying to like implement things that may actually take too long to implement, and suddenly you're stuck in a position where you're not a complete team at the end of it, or like a team that is able to at least perform to a certain level. And I think that's what G2 has been really good at, identifying what Junkers can do. Especially, I think his Lee Sin is still one of the best. So put him on it as much as possible and get some counter picks in the lane and make the same thing happen as he used to.
Yeah, I actually say if you even look at some of the public things that have been said by Nelson in interviews and on Discords and stuff, he basically implied some of the anecdotes he was telling about what he'd done with the team. It's kind of like what you were saying there, both of you. It's like, it definitely did look like he was doing some band-aiding. Like, the anecdotes he were telling made it sound like, I totally get why G2's had these problems, because basically it sounded like players like Mickey X or Wunder, they would just basically want to pick champions as though they were the players from 2 years ago who were like far and away the best at their role, and they could sort of just pick whatever they felt like playing, even if it wasn't a good champion in the current meta. And as far as I can tell, Nelson basically came in and was sort of like, look, you aren't that player anymore. And secondly, the game isn't like that anymore. Like, you got to actually pick what's meta. Like, these are the strong champions. Like, don't pick something just because it's like your signature, but like you aren't the best player. Because I feel like G2 themselves, that's what I always thought was going to be their struggle this split. And I'm actually very impressed with the turnaround so far, which is like, I actually said this on some of my talk shows. Grabs in some senses has the hardest coaching job, because it's one of the only coaching jobs I'm aware of where it was never even on the table you could ever replace any of the players. So good luck. You have to just fix it with whatever's right in front of you. Like, dude, everyone else, even in fucking NA, they take the superstars out and put like randoms into if they think there's a problem for 3 weeks or something. You know, like in G2, you just have to figure it out with these players, which means in this case, if a player has a different perception of how he can play, you just have to work on the play. You can't replace him literally. So I think that's very tough to have figured it all out with.
And there is something. Oh, sorry, Morris, go.
No, you go. You go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to double down on the what you say, like band-aiding. Like, you do that a lot. Like, when you're staff, that's pretty much what you do on a daily basis, because you're not writing a book, right? You're not writing some theory shit about how leagues should be played and that's the perfect champion. If you don't play it because they play it in Korea, you're gonna... No, that's not what you're doing, right? You're doing sports. And in sports, it's always band-aiding and try to find the best solution to be ready on the D-Day. And I feel like that's much more that's much more effective than going and just trying to like write a book with the perfect theory, or like, oh, you need to play Pyke because in this situation there's the best counter matchup. We've seen a lot of players just picking their favorite champion and doing 10 times more than the actual champion that, you know, is played currently in China, that no one knows how to maneuver around and just lose. So I feel like that's a very, very good concept of like band aiding, even though like I feel like that's pretty much the core of coaching on during a season at least.
Sure. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.